Welcome, everyone, to Game Over International for the 2024 IIHF World Junior Hockey Championships. My name is Peter Klein. Thank you very much for tuning in on this bright, shiny morning. Joined by a couple of guests today, as you have been able to figure out by now. First, we are joined by, Chace McCallum, writer for Elite Prospects Rinkside, and David St. Louis. He is a hockey analyst and prospect writer for Elite Prospects. My name is Peter Klein. I talk about things. Guys, how are we doing after Canada's win over Finland here? David, we'll start with you.
I'm great. It was a pretty fun game overall. I liked it, and we got to see a bit of Macklin Celebrini, which I really wanted to see. So I'm pretty happy about the game overall.
Chace, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Same idea. It was a fun game to watch, and it's nice to get a feel for how the tournament's going to look.
Yeah, overall, like you guys said, a pretty fun game to watch there. 7 goals, a couple of them going into an empty net. A couple more almost did from Finland's passes. They were very casual about all of that. But in the end, it is just a 5-2 win for the Canadian side. And we'll get into the prospects and the scouting nature of this particular tournament as this show kind of rolls along. But Chace, we'll start with you. I guess from a Canadian perspective, people were talking about them as a top 3 team in this tournament, but maybe third. How do you think Canada handled today's game against Finland?
Yeah, I mean, you could see some of the concerns relative to previous years. Like, I think Canada still obviously has a very, very good team, but you could see, especially like the power play, I thought looked somewhat disjointed compared to previous years, which may be a function of not having a Connor Bedard level talent to kind of run things. But I mean, it's still very clear that they're a very deep, very talented team. Like you can see Allard, Beck, and Danielson, they can trust in defensive zone situations. And Couturier, Savoy, and Cowan were generating a lot of offensive chances. Geeky and Demise had their moments too as well, Celebrini. So, I mean, I think the team looked strong, albeit probably less strong than previous years, which is what people expected.
And David, this was a Canadian team where there was some talk about like where some of the goals going to be coming from, that they get 5 today. But it kind of felt like a game to me anyway. Of you kind of saw, sorry, I'm very choked up about this game. You kind of saw what you needed or what you wanted to see from Canada. Like like Chace said, you see that back line that we're going to talk about. I think Canada's going to fall in love with that line. Celebrini gets some chances. It just kind of seemed like you checked off all the boxes you want to see from this Canadian team.
Yeah, and it's getting pretty clear already that they want to play a certain style and that they've chosen their lineup according to that style, and they're trying to implement it by playing those guys a lot, like Beck, Danielson, by picking Owen Allard and giving him that kind of ice time. They want to half grind it out, I think, and really go on the boards, pick up pucks, get to the point, shoot it on net, and create some chaos there. They have a lot of skill still, but you can see that they want to work first and maybe skill second. Which is why you see Celebrini still got a lot of ice time, I think, overall, but he plays a different game than the rest of the team. Like he has those dynamic skills, and he wants to force plays, like make every play you can see, even if they're in their really small lane. And you got Beck and the Danielson and Allard who want to play a safer game, and it still works too. And I think it's going to be their identity so far in this tournament. They're going to prioritize working hard, playing good defensively, and trying to have shut down teams and create by just going to the dangerous areas. And it's a game that Celebrini can play still. So it looks like a pretty good team. There are some holes, some weaknesses. We'll talk about them, but overall, it was a pretty good game.
A couple of things coming out of that. I do want to stick on the Beck Danielson and Allard line there for a second, Chace. This was a line that I think really kind of set the identity for this team going forward, and kind of like set the tone for this game of what Canada was looking to do. There was some talk coming in again. This is going to have to be one of those Canadian teams that grinded things out, and they did that. The first goal goes in off of the butt of Danielson. That they create some opportunities with forechecks and things like that, and they were really able to I think kind of establish that tone that they wanted to. What did you see from a line that, like I said before, I think Canada's going to fall in love with over the next 11 days?
Yeah, I mean, the line looked, you can tell if you're constructing a line like that, it's fairly obvious what you're going for. Like, you're going for the kind of line that a coach is going to fall in love with. I think you're right, Canada's going to fall in love with. if they can take the team pretty deep into the tournament. And you could see they were trusting them defensively. They were trusting them to kill penalties. They were trusting them everywhere. And you can see it's more of a grindy line than last year. The headline was Bedard scoring 6 goals a game. It felt like every single game. You can definitely see this shift in identity compared to previous years, and I think that line kind of summed it up perfectly. And I think they played it mostly to a T today.
Yeah. David, what did you see from that line? Obviously, you've written about Habs prospects and all prospects before, but Beck is someone who I know Montreal Canadiens fans are going to have a particular eye on. What did you see from that group in this game?
Yeah, what I like about that line is that they all know what they are as players. So you see that Danielson going to the net. He's pretty good at playing away from the puck to finding pockets of space, and he's getting shot chances from those kind of plays. And you get Allard, who's just running up and down the ice and for checking. And he's maybe not the most skilled prospect, but he has that kind of size and that kind of force in his game. So he can work on that kind of line. And you saw Beck's playmaking in this game too. He makes some plays off entry, so he would get in defensive zone, stop, put on the brakes, and hit trailers. I think he connected with Denton Matejchuk for a good pass, and Matejchuk just ran through the entire team, made a pass to Danielson. So there's some skill there. He has some playmaking skills, and Danielson too. So they have that level of skill, and they play that kind of hard game. So it's going to work well for the entire tournament. I really like them, honestly, together.
You mentioned Matejchuk there. I dream of having the confidence this kid has. And also, the high-end skills, although at 34 years old, I feel like that's probably gone for me. But David, what did you see from Matejchuk? Because he was one who kind of jumped off the ice to me.
Yeah, well, we really like him as elite prospects, honestly, because he's that confident defenseman. He's not afraid to make plays. Like on breakouts, he saw many good breakout passes. I think he had the most advantage creation in the game, or am I misreading things? I just got the stats from Mitch Brown and Lassie about the entire game, the advanced stats, but he played a pretty good game overall, and he was jumping into play and making the usual plays we see from them in the Western Hockey League. So anywhere he plays, be it in the NHL preseason or in the junior games or at the World Junior Championship, he's always going to try to make those plays. And I think he's going to carry a lot of the offense from the back end there on that team, because looking at the rest of the defensemen, they're not as comfortable making those kinds of plays. There's Lamour, who can fake some defenders sometimes, but mostly about, in this tournament at least, getting the puck and shooting it on net. Like, he's not going to make those risky plays, but Matejchuk has the skill and the confidence to do it. So he's a player to watch, honestly. If you want to really focus on someone in this tournament and watch how he plays to maybe implement some things in your own games, I think Matejchuk could be one that's really interesting.
Yeah, Chace Matejchuk. There was a couple of times where like the hands and the skill and stuff like that looked every bit like a forward out there. Obviously, helping things out on the blue line. But what did you see from a prospect who has put up a boatload of points out here in the Western League?
Yeah, I mean, the confidence is the key, and you can tell he's been asked to generate some of the offense in exchange for, presumably because of the way the forwards are going to be more of a physical, some of them more of a physical game. And he's just not afraid at all to jump up, and he's consistently making things happen when he does. And I find he's a very intelligent player, I think. Like, he manages to be very offensive without giving a ton of obvious looks back defensively. Obviously, you will eventually get burned if that's going to be the game you're going to play as a defenseman, but he doesn't sacrifice nearly as much as you would maybe expect him to as well, which I find very impressive.
Yeah, I liked his game a lot, and I think he's going to be someone that, another one of those ones who kind of stands out here for Canada. I thought another line chase that stood out for Canada in this game was, or I guess a pairing of Savoy and Poitras, and I'm apologizing to everyone for butchering how they were pronounced. But for Poitras, oh, well, good, thank you. 2 for 2 so far. We're not going to talk a lot of Finnish players, or else I'll miss on a lot of them. For Poitras, we've kind of established he's good at this level, right? Like, he's playing in the National Hockey League, so we kind of figure amongst his own age group, he's going to be really, really good. But He was also really, really good tonight. When you're looking at a player like that, where he has kind of reached the level you want him to reach in the National Hockey League, how do you evaluate that sort of a talent compared to some of the other guys like a Celebrini who we're seeing how he could potentially fit? You now know this guy can. How do you evaluate his tournament compared to some others?
For me or David?
Sorry, for you, Chace. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, they're all in the same tournament, so I'm not going to grade him on a curve or anything just because he plays in the NHL. Like, and you just go in with the exact same, or maybe not the same set of expectations. Obviously, the role and whatnot will change, but like, I'm going to try to evaluate him the same way. And I mean, I thought he looked incredibly impressive, as he should, again, given the expectations coming in. Like, he managed to find space really well, I thought. They had a couple nice give and goes. Like, he seemed like played very smart today. Got a lot of pockets of space to get shots off and whatnot, and you can see the results are going to come from that line, like 100%.
Yeah, and there was just, David, there was a chemistry there instantaneously with those two, just right away. It's like, oh, well, these two guys know exactly what they're doing. What did you see from that pairing?
Yeah, they've been pretty dynamic, I think, overall. And it's going to be another duo that's going to carry the team's offense, I think, because Poitras is coming. Poitras, you see, I'm using the French pronunciation now. It's hard for me not to do that. But he's coming in off the NHL game. So he's coming in with a lot of confidence, and he's making those tiny plays to Savoy, and he's finding space too. And they played that kind of give and go game, like Chace said. And it's mostly that Savoy is really, really skilled. So as long as he has someone who can feed him the puck, he can find space, he can get shots off, and he's going to feed off a player like this. So I'm really looking forward to watching them together, honestly, in this tournament.
The one, I guess, downside for Canada in this, I think they were down to the concrete in the trips to the penalty box by the end. They cut a pretty good path down there. Savoy was in there a couple of times, I believe. I guess going forward, Chace, how concerning is maybe a discipline issue against Finland? Or do we just chalk this up to it's the first game of the World Juniors? They mentioned a couple of times there's 3,500 Canadians in there. You know, emotions are high when you're under 20 years old in that type of an environment.
Yeah, it's tough to say. Obviously, you can only go so far from one game. But, you know, especially it's your first game of the tournament, the jitters and everything. I imagine it's quite the stressful experience for them. And they're all very high pedigree players. I'm sure they can rely on their experience as the tournament goes on and whatnot to kind of calm themselves down. But so as much as you can't be concerned about one game's worth of penalties, and I think probably will get better. I mean, if that keeps up, especially, you know, you look to like the rosters that Sweden and the US have, if they're consistently making trips to the box in this tournament, they're going to pay very heavily sooner rather than later, I think.
Yeah. And Chace, is that something when you're evaluating these prospects? Like you guys are more the experts. Again, I'm just the guy who talks really fast. But for the prospect kind of breakdown, how do you evaluate that when you're looking at like, okay, well, this guy played really good. Also, boatload of penalties against Finland. Like how much of a mark is that on a player's scouting report, given that it is just one game?
So I don't do the actual scouting reports, but from a statistical perspective, it is definitely a signal, like a negative signal. Like a lot of the guys who take significant penalties at the lower levels, you will not see them advancing. And even some of the guys you see who take, you know, they're kind of feisty at the higher levels, say like a Nazem Kadri, don't tend to take that many penalties in junior. So if you have somebody taking a ton of them, it's at least a red flag to me. It's not like you can't overcome it, but it's not a good thing, that is for sure.
Yeah. And David, you wrote a piece about players who had a lot to prove, and there was a couple of them in this tournament in this game, who were highlighted at the top of that, with Danielson and Pulkkinen for Finland. We're one game in, but how much of that proving did they do in 60 minutes of sample size here?
Yeah, I'm really happy about it, choosing them, because honestly, they had pretty great showing to open the tournament. I don't think that Danielson showed the extent of his skill set, really, but he was in the right the right areas of the ice. Like, he went to the net, he played that off-puck game that he's really good at finding space. Like, you saw flashes of his hockey sense and the two-way game. So you saw him play the kind of role that he's going to play in the NHL anyway. And he's got points from it because he really fits that Canada identity too. So he's going to set the tone for this team. And as long as he continues to play with that same kind of energy, going on the forecheck and finding those right spaces, teammates are going to find him much more often on this team than maybe on the team he has in the WHL. So I think it's going to be a great setting for him to really prove to the Detroit fan that he's more than his point totals this season, and he's starting to do it already in this first game. So that was pretty good from him. And I really like the Finnish defenseman too. I haven't watched him as much as others on our team, but he really impressed me in this game. He's willing to make plays on every puck touch. He's going to try and beat defender. And we're talking about JC Polkinen. I think that is his name. And at the end of the game, he made this great give and go. Like the defender was coming at him. He faked him, passed the puck to his teammate, and then attacked the open space. He's really willing to take risk, and he has that kind of range, the kind of handling skills to really make those plays. So he's another really exciting player to watch, and you should really focus on him if you watch the Finnish team. He's number 15.
Yeah, Finland had a few players to watch, but he was definitely one who stood out. This is Game Over International for the 2024 IIHF World Junior Hockey Championships. My name is Peter Klein, joined by Chace McCallum and David St. Louis here this morning. Reminder, while you guys are here, you may as well like the video. Subscribe to the SDPN YouTube channel as well. We are closing in on 100,000 subscribers, and that just lets us do a bunch of awesome stuff. So while you're here, make sure you like that and subscribe. If you've missed anything, the video lives on YouTube for forever. That's how the website works. But also, these will be available in podcast form once this thing is all wrapped up. And I made the joke earlier. My name is Peter Klein. I am part of Game Over for the Calgary brand. I don't know if you could have picked that up from the hat that I'm wearing. But really excited to be a part of these World Junior ones. We're going to do these for every Canada game throughout the tournament. And David, one player who is going to be, I think, a big part of a lot of these conversations is Macklin Celebrini. This tends to not necessarily be a tournament for draft-eligible players, but then Connor Bedard, as he's done his entire life, broke the mold. And even Alexis Lafreniere a couple of years ago, where he just kind of beasted out as a draft-eligible player, may have kind of changed the bar a little bit. So I guess, what were you looking for from Celebrini in this game, and did you find it?
Yeah, I think that there's more for him to show, honestly, because he has that kind of that other level of skill. But already he was pretty dynamic. Like he was attacking the middle with every puck he had. He was making some plays. He forced a lot of plays too, but that comes with his play style and being a 17-year-old in this kind of tournament. So it's not a concern to me. As long as he tries to make plays, he's going to hit on some of them, and some of them are going to lead to goals. And you saw is kind of not physical edge, but like he's willing to really drive the net and take the pucks inside, like I said. So he has that kind of play style that fits the Canada team still. So he's a good fit for this overall team identity, and he has that higher level of skill. Honestly, I want to see him play more. I think he had like maybe 15 minutes of ice time. You could add a couple of minutes on there, and even if he makes mistakes, he's going to make up for it anyway. So he doesn't he plays a kind of different style a bit, but he's really exciting to watch, and he's the most fun to watch, honestly. So I want to see him more as much as I can.
I forgot to mention this before and was reminded of it because someone complimented me in the chat, and I have a gigantic ego. But we do, at the end of these, our third segment is a presser. So get your questions ready. We got two extremely smart people, and I'm just here in the middle with a Yoda behind me. So ask away your questions at the end of this. But yes, Liz, our Game Over Winnipeg host, who will be a part of these, legitimately one of the smartest hockey people you will ever hear talk about the sport. She chats in. Shout out to Peter for waking up at 6:30 and to start this one and crushing it as always. Yeah, that may have been a tactical error by the Calgary guy to do the 8:30 a.m. Eastern time start, but happy we got this one. And mentioned before, Chace, this was a fun game to watch. Celebrini was absolutely a part of it. The puck just kind of jumps off this kid's stick. Like, I don't know how you get that to do that, but he has figured it out. What did you see from the consensus number one draft pick for the upcoming draft?
Yeah, you can see the dynamic ability that he has basically the second he touches the puck, the second he steps on the ice. And it's almost the contrast of this Canadian team almost makes it look a bit more impressive on him sometimes because it's not the most dynamic team necessarily, but he absolutely has that. And yeah, he didn't get a ton of minutes. I assume that's going to change as the tournament goes on. I could be wrong about that, but he is a fair bit younger than everybody. But you can see the skill set is there, the confidence is there. Like he is going to try things, whether they may not work, because he is a fair bit younger than these guys. He's going to be at a disadvantage there, but I like that he's willing to try things no matter what. And then you can see he got rewarded for it with a goal. It's nice to see him get rolling, and I'm excited to see more of him. Basically, is my stance on it. I think too many. You can see he's kind of a puck magnet and whatnot too when he's on the ice. I would like to see what he looks like playing 20 minutes tonight. I don't know if it'll happen, but I look forward to if it does.
When looking at the stats for these, Chace, you mentioned before that that's kind of your bag. For a kid like Celebrini, where he only plays 15 minutes, I would imagine he hasn't played 15 minutes since he was like 6. Like this is a guy who is used to getting real big ice time loads and a lot like that. Obviously, it's one game, it's small sample size and all of that. But in a game where 5-on-5 was maybe a little bit limited anyway, and then he's limited even more given his age and how this tournament goes, does that change how you look at maybe a statistical breakdown for a kid like that?
Yeah, it's going to have to. 15 minutes is not like he's playing so few minutes you just have to almost throw it out. Like the biggest problem with the ice time stuff a lot of times is when, especially speaking of Finland, some of these guys playing in say the league or the KHL will be getting like 3 minutes a night. And like, well, he scored 1 point in 20 games. It's like, well, points-based model is going to say he's quite poor, but what do you really expect? Like I think Mitch Cobb was playing 4 minutes a night or something like that last year in the KHL. Before he changed teams. So that's when it gets really concerning. But it's definitely something to keep note of, that the ice time is not going to be constant for these guys. You have to be willing to move off of your basic assumptions when the information you have like that is changing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always funny when you get to draft time and you see that they put up the stats, and this kid had 197 points in the QMJHL, but this dude got 3 whole points in Finland, so, like, watch out. It's always fun when they flash those up. David, one more on Celebrini. I think he's going to be the focus of a lot of these, given draft eligibility and whatnot. The one, I guess, kind of critique in his game, and very much, like, feel free to tell me how dumb I am, but it kind of felt like he was caught between what his role on the team kind of is and what he is supposed to be doing. Like he is someone who, like I said, he's used to playing up in the lineup and playing all of these minutes. He is in kind of a middle 6 type of a role, and it seemed like sometimes he wanted to do the simple thing, and then he was like, oh wait, that's not me, let me take all 5 of these guys on by myself and get a chance. Did you kind of see the I guess, for lack of a better phrase, inner turmoil in Celebrini's game the way I did?
Yeah, and I think the coaching staff understand what he is too. Like they've been using him on the power play and for offensive zone face-off. So I think they understand that he's going to play that type of game. He's going to try and create, and I think that they're probably fine with this. It's just that he has to manage it a bit. But like I said, it doesn't matter too much because he's always going to create more than he turns over, I'd say. And in this tournament, I think a lesson for Canada is that sometimes playing too safe is not that good either. If we take the example of the Canada's third pairing, Bunk and Donovan, they tried to make some really safe play with the puck, and they barely made any exit during the game. So they turned the puck over and led to some chances. So sometimes playing too safe is not good too. You have to find that middle ground, and that middle ground will shift depending on your skill level. So if a player like Bunk's middle ground is maybe just try and make some more control plays, Celebrini is maybe here, like he can try a lot more and get away with a lot more because he has the speed to catch up to his mistakes too. So it's different for every player, and I think it's fine if you have a general identity as a team and you have some players who are allowed to do a bit more and some players who are just confident, like Matthew Poitras, who are just going to try those plays anyway. And because he has been playing in a much tighter game for a while, he's able to recognize now when he can make a play and when he can't. Celebrini is not at that stage yet because like he's much younger, but he's going to get there at some point too. So, and even he's so adaptable as a player, so smart that even if you give him ice time during the tournament, he's going to figure it out at some point, like what he can do, what he can't do. And I know he's a 17-year-old, but like he has been playing in the NCAA, so he's been playing against much older players anyway. So I don't think he should limit his ice time because that Finnish team is probably not going to scare him or any formation at this tournament. So just play him, live with some of the mistakes, and I think the coaching staff is going to be rewarded for it.
Yeah, I love watching the kid play. I'm really excited to see what he can do. And like you said, yeah, it's not like he's been playing against kids his own age for a while now. That this is a stage that certainly isn't going to be too big for him. Chase, when you're looking at kind of the whole picture of these kids, obviously this is the biggest stage they're going to be on for a lot of them, right? Like Beck playing at the Memorial Cup and things of that nature are kind of like on par. But before they get to the National Hockey League, this is going to be the biggest spotlight. Well, when you're looking at whether it's the stats, whether it's how they looked on the ice or things like that, how much do you weight what they do at this tournament compared to a Wednesday night against Windsor?
Yeah, so statistically, like I build a draft model that we're going to be using in Elite Prospects, like I just treat World Junior games as another game.
Okay.
So they play 60 OHL games, and then 7 World Junior games. They played 67 games on the season. And you adjust for the fact that the World Juniors are more difficult than most of the leagues that these guys are playing in and whatnot. But from a purely statistical perspective, I haven't found anything better than just, hey, a game's a game.
Right.
Now, with that being said, from when you're actually watching them, it's hard not to put more weight on this. And I don't think it's necessarily a mistake to do that either, because you're seeing these people against the best of the best in their age group. Like it really is the perfect opportunity from a draft or a prospect perspective to see what these guys can do. So I think it makes absolute sense to put more emphasis on some of these games compared to a Wednesday night when you're in Kitchener, especially because I'm not going to say that people take games off necessarily, but when the stakes are higher, right? Like you want to see somebody rise to the occasion rather than, like I said, you're not necessarily taking the Wednesday night game off, but it's clear that the stakes are not nearly as high as a national level game on broadcast.
Yeah. Maybe they don't take games off, but they're much less likely to take them off over these next 11 days than they would be over the course of 60 games and then into the postseason and whatnot as well. David, I guess same question for you. When we're looking at the prospect pie, how big of a piece does this tournament get?
I think this could be a very long answer, and to try and keep it short. It depends on the prospect, honestly. He has been playing in a setting that resemble the NHL game. Like maybe I don't take it into account as much, but if we take a prospect who's been playing in a different league, who we don't see prospect emerge from all the time, it's a good setting to prove themselves. So they're playing against tough competition, maybe better competition. So you look at them and see, is their game translatable? Or someone like the Finnish defenseman Polkinen, like he's a 19-year-old, so he's an overager in this draft. He's a 6'6" defenseman playing in Liga mostly, but how does he look against top prospects? Because he's someone who is really emerging fast in this draft, and you see that his skills do translate to a top stage. So maybe that and this tournament counts more for him than some others, or someone like David Reinbacher last year, who really made a name for himself in this tournament because he was playing in a league where we don't see many prospects emerge from, and now we see him against top competition. He's more than surviving; he's thriving. So maybe he's a better prospect than we thought. So you try to not put too much weight on tournaments, but for some prospects you kind of have to, because it's the best setting you're going to see them in during the year. So you take that into account, and if someone has a great performance in the tournament, and it's not just like a flash in the pan, he's not just lucky, you can watch his shifts and all of this, but it can affect his draft stock. So you try to not weight it too much. For some prospects it matters more, and you try and make sense of the whole thing too, using stats, using your you combine everything. It's just more information, honestly.
Yeah, that type of balance has always interested me, because there was a stretch like early mid 2000s. It felt like there were some teams were exclusively drafting the World Juniors, and that was their year. They draft like 4 guys there, and then you'd never hear from them again, right? Like it's a tournament where there's 20 some odd players on each team and 8 teams. I don't think you're going to take a 160 game parlay that all of them are going to hit. So it is an interesting balance to try to figure this out. Chase, just while I have you here, I've always been fascinated by this. With this statistic model, we talked about like a guy who blows it away with both points he scored at the Elite League. How does a model handle that? Like that would obviously, I would imagine, kind of throw things off kilter a little bit.
Yeah, so there's certain things that, at least with public data, like you just have to be aware your model is going to miss. Like there's a reason I want to work with guys like David, because they can intelligently tell me ways in which the model is likely to be wrong. And that is clearly going to be one of them. Like we see it time and time again. Now, that being said, I think something that I do and I think should be more common is that there's signal in league quality in and of itself that I've started to build into the models. So like just showing up in the Liga as an example, since we're talking about the Canada-Finland game, like just playing professional level games at 18 is a huge signal. Even if you score 2 points and you can say, well, 98 OHL points are more impressive than 2 Pro League Liga points, which they still probably are, even though even after any sort of adjustment. But like to treat the league quality of as a signal in and of itself, that not only from a purely statistical perspective, but also I think something that gets missed with a lot of models like this is you're baking a lot of the eye test into it, right? Because how do you get to them? A professional coach decides that, hey, this 17-and-a-half-year-old gives me a better chance to win this than this 31-year-old who's been playing professional hockey for 5 years. So to build that in as a signal, I think is a really good way to kind of like cheat from a statistical perspective, because you get to bake in some of what professional coaches think about these prospects into the models themselves. So that's the primary way I would try to get around it, but you're still kind of at the mercy of the data you have available, and then you need to lean on guys like David to be like, look, this guy playing 2 minutes a night, the model's only going to go so far on him with what we have available.
Yeah, you almost get like some kind of multiplier for, hey, you made it, which exactly. I would imagine. Yeah, it's such a tricky balance to walk, I would guess. Chatting here after a 5-2 Canada win over Finland. I saw someone in the chat asking for the score. Yes, I guess I shouldn't assume that everyone woke up at 6:30 a.m. Mountain Time to watch this thing. Canada with a 5-2 win here over Finland in their tournament opener. A couple more here for you guys before we get into the chat questions. David, does the big ice surface affect how you watch and grade these prospects? I mean, it affects how you watch. It's the only way we can. But how does the big ice surface, I guess, affect your evaluation of how these kids are playing?
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be affecting my evaluation, but it's hard to factor that in, especially for players who are used to playing on any ice. And if you look at Canada right now, they're playing the same type of game they would play on a smaller surface. Like, I don't think there's any changes. Attack the middle, they go on the boards, like they make those puck protection plays. So it's the same style of game. But for someone who's a top prospect in a league that uses international ice, who's used to having that extra space on the boards, you won't see a physical game as much, and you'll see him use patterns on the wall to escape that he won't be able to use in a North American type of setting. So it depends. You have to, again, it depends on each prospect. You have to look at them, the what kind of offensive patterns that they use, and are they translatable to the smaller ice. And I don't think we're going to see any change for someone who is used to swing on a smaller ice on this tournament, because they're going to play the same type of game. But there might be someone who shines a lot on the European side who plays a less translatable game, because they use extra space to hide a bit on the play and to make plays off the wall that they wouldn't be able to make in other settings. So again, it depends for each prospect, honestly.
Yeah, there's a lot of nuance to these questions that I'm just throwing at you. I'm fully understanding that it's kind of point by point basis. So we'll go through the entire roster now and see. No, but for Finland, one of the players who I thought kind of jumped out was Hellenius. He's another one who is draft eligible this year. Didn't see a ton from him, but you notice him in part because he's wearing a cage. But he did seem like he was creating quite a bit for Finland. And one of the notes I took was he even glides fast. Like it seems like that the skating ability was really impressive. I guess, Chace, did you notice him as much as I did? And was there someone, this has been a very Canadian heavy show for obvious reasons. Were there a player or two on the Finnish side who kind of stood out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I was watching Hellenius. I will get to him in a second. There was somebody else on Team Finland that I really wanted to focus on. But Hellenius did keep standing out over and over, which is absolutely huge. We talk about Celebrini being young. I think Hellenius is a little bit older relatively, but like they're both draft eligible prospects in this tournament. So if you can show up and make a name for yourself, that is an incredibly impressive signal. And I think he's going to get drafted really, really high because of the skill we're seeing today. And then on Finland, I really liked, I don't know how to pronounce his last name. In my head, I just call him Lenny all the time. Hameno, I think. I could be butchering that, but
I think.
Kamaho. Okay. So yeah, I wanted to watch Lenny, who I will continue to call him so that I don't have to read his last name. But he was somebody, when I watched him, I didn't find him particularly inspiring last year, but the draft model really, really liked him. I mean, he was able to show up and produce fairly well in a professional league at a young age, which any sort of model is going to really, really like. So I was excited to watch him, and I thought he looked fantastic today. He's not like a dominant skater necessarily, but I think he's a very smart player. He managed to get himself some looks, and he even had one play where he managed to drive the middle and split the D. Like I was very impressed by him.
Well, what about you, David? Who are some of the Finnish standouts to you on this day?
Yeah, I pretty much have two. We talked about the defenseman Pulkkinen already, so I won't bring him back. But for me too, Lenny. I mean, now I really like his game. I think he looks faster a bit, so that was really surprising and encouraging for his development because the rest of his game is pretty good. He just needs the skating. Like he's a high hockey sense player for sure. Like he understands the game very well. He knows how to position. He knows how to exploit gaps in coverage, and he can even dangle sometimes. We saw it in this game, especially against junior competition. So he has all of those skills. He just needed the skating to carry them. So it's not up like to average NHL grade, I would say, but he looks faster from just more strength, and it keeps happening every draft. Like there's this player who's not a great skater, but they always end up improving it, I think, to a point where it's really that much of a problem. And it's something I've been learning through my years of doing this scouting work. It's that maybe skating deficiencies don't matter as much as we think they do. And that's another example with Aminaho, who I think is going to be a very important player for Finland for the duration of the tournament.
Yeah, it felt like anytime Finland had a scoring opportunity, I'll just say he was right around it the whole time. It felt like he was in there on a number of opportunities. And lastly, we are in Canada, so we do have to talk about the goaltending position. I'm fascinated by, obviously by the position in general, because it just feels like we have a bit of a gap right now between the high-level players at this position. Chace, statistically speaking, and just whatever you saw, it's such a weird position to try to get a grasp on. Like for defensemen and for forwards, that there's a smart use of his stick, good edge work, shoots the puck really well. For goalies, it's like, well, he sure got in the way of that thing really well. It can be a tricky thing to do. And even at this tournament, like Justin Pogge had a .964 save percentage in his year. Carey Price, I think, was a .951. One of those things is not like the other. How difficult is the goalie position just in general to evaluate? And what did you see from Rosso in this game, helping Canada pick up a win and really just bring the house down for the Canadian side?
Yeah, I mean that one save he had in the first period, absolutely electric. Early save of the tournament. Candidate and whatnot. I will say, admittedly, I'm mostly going to have to punt on this question. Okay. I was a goalie growing up, so I think I'm all right at like understanding mentally the position. But as an analyst, I really haven't gone there statistically because there's so like the data concerns that exist for forwards and defenders just get like aggressively amplified in that. So I haven't really done that, and then I don't really consider myself a goaltending scout at all, so I will probably punt mostly on that question.
Well, I would say given the success of a lot of NHL teams, even people who are goalie scouts shouldn't be goalie scouts, as this is a position the NHL has struggled with. But David, like I said, that this tournament, we see basically every Latvian goalie ever is awesome, according to this tournament. Just as a position in general, how do you address it? And again, what did you see from the Canadian netminder in this game?
I think when you don't know how to evaluate a position, you stick to the highlights more. So I think that's why some great moments can get the league drafted like this, because some teams see a goalie who's going to play very well on a big stage. And usually it's signs of maybe mental strength. Honestly, with Chace, we rely on specific people to make our goalies scouting. So I won't get into the details, but great performances on great stages matter most, I think, for positions like goaltenders, especially when it's a bit harder to project. So you cling to what you see in terms of highlights, I think. So if Uso has a great performance throughout the tournament, I think he is going to increase his stock for sure.
Yeah, it's a position I haven't been able to figure out. Like I said, I'm basically like, oh yeah, he's been able to stop it. For a while there, it was the thing that I would say when I wanted to sound smart was, well, he stays big when he goes post to post. But then
Yeah, it's something.
one of the best at it was Jonas Gustafsson. And so I don't know if that's really the pillar I want to be building my goalie foundation on when it comes to scouting. So it's a tricky position to get figured out. But I'm lucky. Like I talk on the radio out here a little bit, and we have a former goalie who comes in after every Flames game, and so there's a lot of times I'm like, I feel like he should have stopped that. He should have stopped that, hey? And he'll go into the smart stuff, so I can just kind of like, here you go, and pass that along. But it's a position that Canada has struggled in, admittedly, in kind of developing over the last little bit. But it's one where, I mean, you had a save of the tournament candidate like 3 minutes into this game, and it helps Canada with a 5-2 win. We are approaching now what we call around these parts the presser. So get your questions in if you have any questions about what we've said or about anything from this game. Let us know in the chat. I will be following along, and so we can ask again. We got two extremely smart people here. Why not take advantage of it on a Boxing Day morning? But while you guys are getting those questions in, remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel. You can follow all of us on social media. Chace is at CMHockey66, and David is at David Saint _Louis. The Saint is ST. So find him on. I'm still going to call it Twitter because find them on X sounds like something that's very illegal. And my name, I am at Primetime Klein on every social media channel. So make sure you get your questions in to the chat here as we talk about a Canadian 5-2 win over Finland. We're going to be doing one of these game overs here for Game Over International for the 2024 IIHF World Junior Hockey Championship after every Canada game, which includes tomorrow, Canada taking on Latvia. Audie James, my co-host with, I guess I'm more his co-host. He's definitely the one in charge on the Game Over Calgary broadcasts, but he's going to be covering things for you tomorrow at a much more reasonable time when Canada takes on Latvia in this one. I guess while we're waiting for a couple questions to come in, Chace, we'll start with you. A lot of focus on the Americans, a lot of focus on Sweden. Is there a player or team aside from Canada that you're looking forward to seeing?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like a traitor for saying this, being a Canadian, obviously cheering for Team Canada and whatnot, but this is the most excited I think I've ever been to watch the U.S. team play in this tournament. I think they're going to look really, really good, and I'm really excited to see the old USDP line, the Perot, Smith, and Ryan Leonard. For those at home, that will be a group that are probably going to be must-watch television every time they're on the ice. I'm not 100% sure if they're a line in this tournament. That was just a blind assumption on my part, but those are three names that I'm really excited to see at this tournament for the U.S. squad.
David, what about you? Who's got your eye this tournament?
I'm also looking forward to watching the U.S. team. Honestly, there's a bunch of players I want to rewatch because during the season we mostly focus on draft eligible players, but we watched all of these players before in their draft year. So now it's about figuring out have they improved in the way we thought they would. Have they added anything else to their game? And there's a bunch of drafted prospects on that U.S. team that maybe we didn't like as much as others, or we really, really liked, and we want to see them in a different setting, see how they perform now. So it's going to be really exciting. Honestly, it's the main team I want to watch, and a few players on team Sweden too.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a great tournament. I'm so excited that we are doing these. Also, just a quick shout out to Elite Prospect. As someone who has done play-by-play for minor hockey games around here, the amount of information that I can get is borderline cheating. So it is a great help. And I mean, like, for higher levels as well. Just a phenomenal resource. And then you get a couple of writers like the two people who I'm joined with today. It just rounds everything out well. So shout out to Elite Prospects. All right, we have a question from earlier from Malkin's Milkshake. I'm assuming government name. Malkin's Milkshake asks, did Braden Yeager look good? Just woke up. I guess we'll start with David. Well, what did you make of Yeager in this game?
I don't think he had the biggest role on this team. And the issue with Yeager is that what he does real well is shoot pucks in the offensive zone. And he's not used, I don't think so, on the power play right now, on the half wall. So he's not set up for success. So I could say he looked quiet. He didn't look that good. But honestly, it's just right because he doesn't have that prominent role that would allow him to shine. So there are players like this, and it happens every year. You've got a player plays on a third line, and he's a pretty quiet tournament, doesn't score a lot, and his team fan base is down on him. But it's just role. If you want to score at this tournament, you need power play one, and you need top six role next to good line mates. He has a good line mate in Celebrini sometimes, but unless like he gets set up on the power play for repeated shots, he's not going to score that much. So maybe you should tone down your expectations for him if you continue to have the same spot in this tournament. Or maybe he's going to increase his role in the lineup and find a way to score. But his skating looked pretty good. It's just that we didn't get to see his greatest qualities because he couldn't display them. So that's pretty much my evaluation right now.
Yeah, out here, I remember Dylan Dubé played in 2 World Juniors, and his first one, he was in a fourth-line checking role, and he may have scored as many goals in the tournament as I did. But that was not his role. And then the next year, he was captain. And so it's just it's part, like you said, it's the role that you are given, and it's the role that you have to kind of make the best of. Chace, was Jaeger a player that stood out to you in this game?
Yeah, I was basically the same as David. Like, I mean, I didn't really notice him doing anything particularly poorly, but I didn't notice him a ton. Yeah, it's not a huge role for him. Him and Matthew Wood were both names I had like highlighted, and then either of them got a particularly large role. So yeah, it's kind of tough to take anything crazy away from one limited minute game for somebody like that.
Deeds Undone 86. Sorry, it's early. Short of the normal answer of goaltending, if this Canadian World Junior team has a weakness, what would it be? And follow up, how do they go about fixing it? Chace, we'll start with you. Outside of Between the Pipes, is there an area of concern for this Canadian team, and how would they fix it over a 10-day period?
Yeah, I mean, the primary thing that I would think of, I want to see them. We talked about they want to play a more physical-minded game. I want to see what they look like playing from behind, where it's obvious they need people to go out and make something happen. I'm really interested to see how that ends up going for them. I mean, we've seen Portrays and Savoy connect on some really impressive plays. We can see chemistry there. Even the Allard Beck Danielson line was better offensively than I probably would have expected tonight. So maybe I'm wrong about this. Maybe they will have the kind of offensive flash to overcome something like that. But I think the most obvious way is get somebody like Celebrini going at a very, very high level, right? Like, it's clear that's where he's the most like dynamic offensive player they have. We said we played 15 minutes ish a night. I think that would be someone interesting you would look to. Or, I mean, they do have a ton of shooting talent. Like, you see Jaeger and Wood both barely played, we were just talking about, but like, they can turn a shot into a goal at any time if you give them a look with space. So, I mean, I think they have the players to do it if it comes down to it, but it's easier said than done. So I'm interested to see what they look like in must-score situations rather than more even / protecting a lead situations.
Yeah, and the tricky thing about this tournament, like, with all due respect, I don't think Latvia is going to provide that challenge in the next game. And so it's like you get one, maybe, depending on your group, one, maybe 2 real tests in the round robin. And then it's just like, well, hope you figured it out, because now you play a murderer's row on your way to a championship. David, what about you? Is there an area of concern for you for this Canadian squad?
You said it. You have to learn from your lessons quite fast, and you have to spot those lessons too. And I think there's one in this game. Like, your defensemen have to be able to make plays to get the puck out of the zone, and you have to give them the right to do it and the confidence to do it. So there are some pretty good puck movers still on this blue line. Like, Oliver Bonk is more defensive defenseman, Noah Warren too, but they can make those breakout plays, and Jake Furlong is capable of it too. So you just have to be given the opportunity to do it, because much of your offense comes from those breakout. If your defensemen are scared to make plays because they want to stick to the simple game, you might have some issues scoring down the line too. So yes, you're going to be at risk of more turnovers, but if you get behind, especially, you have to open up the valve and try some plays, and it usually comes from the defense, because if you get the puck cleanly out of zone, I think you have enough skill on the offense, even if it's not like the dominant teams of years past, to still score. So it's just a matter of transition play for me.
Yeah, it's and that's been a lot of talk around this team. I do think some of the talent on this Canadian team has been undersold a little bit. I do now. That's a very Canadian thing, just in general, where I think we kind of romanticize. Oh, we're the plucky underdogs going in there and grinding our way to victory with Ryan Getzlaff. It's not necessarily always the case, because I do think, like we talked about, Celebrini can score. Matachuk will feel like he can deke out the world. Like there's absolutely talent on this Canadian team, but yeah, it's just, can they put it up there when there's a bit more resistance being put toward them? Trinka asks, how can we bribe Latvia into giving us all the goalie syrup? Give them maple, or goalie secret, sorry. Give them maple syrup. Yeah, Latvia, they've got that. They've got that one down. There's always a kid with like no vowels in his name who comes in and makes 57 saves. So maybe my joke about Latvia not providing the challenge is going to come back to bite us. And Audie, who we joke about on Game Over Calgary, there's an Audie curse because he does seem to get a lot of the more poor performances from a Flame standpoint. Now, there's been a lot of them this year anyway, but so hopefully I didn't just jinx us. But yeah, they've got that goalie thing figured out in Latvia. That is for sure. Wow, we're just about an hour on this thing, which I normally wouldn't say at 10 in the morning in Calgary. But we are going to put a bow on this one today. I could chat with you guys all day. This was a blast. Thank you guys so much for hopping on. David, a last minute addition. Our Ty Nelson to this program today, jumping on at the last minute. But I guess just lastly here, as we wind down, I'll give you guys a chance to, as I say in one of my roles as a wrestling announcer, put yourselves over a little bit. Chace, we'll start with you. Where can people find you?
Yeah, I mean, I write at Elite Prospects, EP Rinkside, and the easiest way to find me, everything I'm doing, I'll usually be posting updates of what I'm working on because it's a lot of longer form, like statistical stuff, would be on Twitter at CMHockey66. I'll post everything there. No matter where it ends up, it will always be there. So that would be the easiest place to find me and everything I'm doing.
Perfect. And David?
Yeah, so same for me. You can look me up on Twitter, which is my name. And my work is always on EP Rinkside. We're covering the tournament every day now. We're releasing the best players of each day, and we're going to be making some breakdowns. And you should look to our YouTube channel too. We have some videos, analysis on drafted prospects. So if your team is heading toward the bottom of the standings, you might find some interesting stuff here on draft eligible prospects.
Well, I know for viewers who know me from Game Over Calgary, we'll be tuning into that one, absolutely. My name is Peter Klein. You can find me at Primetime Klein on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. I am on Game Over Calgary. I'll be on the next Game Over Calgary on the 27th. The next Game Over International for the 2024 IIHF World Junior Hockey Championship is coming up tomorrow as Canada plays Latvia. Audie James will have you covered from the hosting side, and again, joined by some very smart people and very talented people from Elite Prospect. So, one more time, make sure you hit like, make sure you hit subscribe. I've had a lot of fun. Thank you guys, and we will talk to all of you again tomorrow.